We're joined now by our Palestinian journalist from speaking to us live out of Jenin, Brother Osama Nazzal. Welcome, and it's always good to have you on the program.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Well, what we see is the latest update now from Israel in occupied Palestine. Israel Hamas, I beg your pardon, Israel to pull thousands of troops from Gaza Battle. Is that the Israeli military says it will withdraw 5 combat brigades taking part in the ground invasion of Gaza so troops can gain strength for future battles. Can you explain this to us?
Yeah, the Israeli occupation government started its genocidal campaign against the Palestinians, whether in Gaza or the West Bank 3 months ago. And it killed over 22,000 Palestinians, including many who are still under the rubble. So the total number could be in excess of 29 to 30,000 Palestinians killed and over 57,000 injured, and thousands of them are in a critical condition. And Israel started its murder process against the Palestinians, now taking some steps like withdrawing some of its forces in the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli military occupation establishment announced. As you said, 5 of its brigades were drawn, and most of them are of the reservists who need to go back to their companies and to their businesses, as the Israeli economy suffered real blow because of this war against the Palestinians, as Israel is trying to say that it is achieving its targets in Gaza, and so there is no need to keep all its forces fighting in Gaza at the expense of the Israeli economy and the other aspects of the Israeli life. This is really the Israeli story, of course, but it could be due to the understandings, and I'm not going to use here the word the pressure from the United States on the current Israeli war government, as the United States has been pushing Israel for weeks to move from what they call the second phase of war, that we call the second phase of genocide and murder of our people in Gaza, to the third
Mm.
of murder and killing, which focuses on a specific and definite targeting of Palestinians using the special forces, the assassination that has already started just yesterday, killing the Palestinian leader Al Aruri in Beirut.
Hmm. And as the year drew to a close, Palestinians in Gaza were praying for a ceasefire but had little optimism that 2024 would be better. And this is when we hear that more and more, acts of genocide have taken place over the last 2, 3 days. It's just increasing. Is it becoming more intense?
Look, the situation in the Gaza Strip is fully collapsing, really, as we are talking more than 1.8 million people from Gaza displaced. We are talking about 1.8 million out of 2.3 million people who are homeless, and most of them are concentrated in a very tiny parcel of land, which is the city of Rafah on the Palestinian Egyptian border, facing all patterns of suffering: the lack of food, the lack of water, the lack of medicine, the paralyzed hospitals, and all humanitarian problems that a human being could think of or imagine. And this is part really of the Israeli occupation military plan of taking the Palestinians out of their homeland. As on the first day of the war, the Israeli war criminals announced that they want to take the Palestinians out of Gaza, and they tried to reach some understandings with Egypt and other countries around the world to implement this plan. But they were not able to implement it militarily, so they are looking for other ways, like keeping the people without any living means in this parcel of land in Rafah, and then the people would have no other option but either to face the diseases that are breaking out in Rafah, the humanitarian crisis that they are facing, or to leave. And this is what the Israeli occupation is trying to name voluntary migration. But in fact, there is nothing called voluntary migration. When you uh, give the people one option, either you die of hunger and thirst and cold, or you leave, then you are forcing the people out of their land, not giving them an option to stay or to leave. And we heard, of course, of the Israeli agreement with the man who is known for his colonial ideology and who occupied Iraq and tortured and killed the people of Iraq, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who would be involved in this transfer project against the Palestinians in Gaza. So we are talking about an ongoing genocidal process, but it's taking different forms. The first form is the murder, the killing, the bombing out of the houses over the heads of children and women. And over the last 24 hours, 206 Palestinian civilians, most of them are women and children, were killed by the Israeli rockets and the Israeli shelling, and hundreds others were injured. We are talking about only 24 hours. So Israel is using its warplanes and its tanks in one way, and in the other, using starvation and creating unbearable humanitarian crisis to implement its plan, which is pushing the Palestinians out. And the Israeli Home Security Minister Ben Gvir announced yesterday that Israel is pressing ahead with its plan of keeping no Palestinian in Gaza. And this represents the colonial mindset and the colonial mentality on the basis of which Israel was established in 1948. So the Palestinians are going through not a second Nakba, and this is what the Palestinian president said in an interview on an Egyptian TV, that this is far beyond the Nakba. It is much worse than the Nakba of 1948.
Mm. And I think, when you read out or call out those numbers, it's each and every number there is a human being. And I don't think we should become desensitized to that, because we've been just hearing the amount of people dead, the amount of people injured, the amount of people displaced. It's not about the numbers. And I just personally don't want to become desensitized to this. We need to understand the magnanimity of this current genocide taking place. We've seen that there's support from the international community in the form of protests, etc. Has that helped in any way? It makes everyone of us feel a little better, because we feel helpless sitting on this end, not being able to do anything. But the protests are taking place, and there are other means of support that are coming through apart from aid. And that also, we don't know how efficient that could be for the people, and whether it's reaching them or not. What impact has international support been for the people of Palestine?
Yeah, it is very important, really, that we keep mobilizing the public opinion around the world and get people to the streets to protest and demonstrate against the Israeli occupation genocidal campaign against the Palestinians, keep pressing the parliaments, keep pressing the governments, whether in the Occident or on the Orient, to live up to their human duty. Because when we talk about supporting the Palestinians against this genocidal campaign, this is not only in favor of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, but it is in favor of humanity as a whole, because
Correct.
it's time for people to express their humanity. And in this context, really, it's very important to thank the government and the people of South Africa who prove that a friend indeed is a friend in need. And they are not only friends of the Palestinians, but they are brothers and sisters of the Palestinians, taking the Palestinian file to the International Court of Justice and filing this important case against the Israeli occupation. Imagine that we have the Arab governments taking the position of the government of South Africa. Imagine the Islamic governments, imagine the other governments around the world taking the same position of South Africa. The Israeli genocidal campaign would have stopped months ago. But regrettably, we don't have governments on this planet that have the courage that the South Africa people and the South Africa government have to stand up and say aloud that no people has the right to end and exterminate the existence of another people, and Israel must stop and it must be tried according to the international law and according to the international legal proceedings. I hope that the step taken by South Africa is going to be an example that would be adopted by other governments who still believe in justice and who still believe in human rights and freedom. This is very important. But you know where the problem is? The American administration that is not only complicit, but it is a participant and an effective actor in the Israeli Zionist genocidal campaign against the Palestinians, as the American administration thwarted all the international effort at the level of the International Security Council to issue a resolution calling for a ceasefire. The American administration announced days ago by its Secretary of State, Blinken, who announced on day one of the war that he is a Jew and he came as a Jew to support Israel, but not as a Secretary of State of the United States, providing Israel with thousands and thousands of bombs, knowing that these bombs are going to be used against the Palestinian children and women in Gaza. So, this American position, as well as the British position and the other European governments' position, is the fuel that Israel is using in its genocidal war against the Palestinian people. Is it possible to force the United States to change this position and adopt the humanitarian position, the position that calls for not killing children and women? This is the problem. What we see that the American people, and despite all the demonstrations and the hundreds of thousands who took the streets in New York and Washington, pressing Biden and Blinken to stop getting their hands stained with the blood of the Palestinian children and women. But until now, they failed to do so. And just a few days ago, Blinken announced that he is going to give Israel more bombs to kill more children and women in Gaza.
Allahu Akbar. Well, we'll have to see what unfolds at the ICJ.
Yeah, as I said, it is a very important step because Israel is always acting as a state above the law. It is always acting as the baby who is protected by the United States in the Security Council. And we saw how the United States used the veto. And since the creation of Israel, the United States used the veto for more than 46 times just against the Palestinian people and to prohibit the Palestinian people of the right to freedom and to justice. So the step taken by the government of South Africa and the people of South Africa is like a light in the darkness that clouds our world these days. And we hope that this light will wake up other governments and other organizations on this planet to follow suit South Africa and file complaints against Israel with the ICJ, with the ICC, and even to go beyond that and call for a change now in the international legal structure, because we know that the whole legal structure today, the United Nations bodies, they are all operating according to the policy and according to the vision that the imperialistic capitalistic system has, which is represented in the United States, Britain, and other Western governments. I think it is time now for the people who are on the global south part of this world to say that the current system is set in service of the Western countries, the American interest, and the imperialistic interest, and it is time to call for a new system according to the interest not only of the global south, but also a global north, because we are all human beings and we are
Correct.
all
The
entitled
same
to
applies.
rights
Yes.
and freedom.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Osama Nazzal. You are in our prayers. We are with you in thought and spirit and all of the Palestinians. May Allah be with you. May Allah grant you the strength and may we be victorious.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Shukran.
you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
That was Brother Osama Nazzal, journalist speaking to us right out of Jenin. Next up, we are joined by Dr. Said El Namruti. He is also talking to us from that part of the world.